Hello and welcome to Citizen McCain. Meghan is still out on maternity leave, so you are stuck with me. But the good news is we also have Ben Ferguson and Christine Rosen. Ben Ferguson is the podcast, he's a talk show host. He's the co-host of The Verdict with Ted Cruz and host of the 47 Morning Update. You can find him at Ben Ferguson Show on X. And Christine Rosen is a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and co-host of the Commentary Magazine daily podcast. And she is not on social media because she's smart. And you can follow AEI or at Commentary on X. So,
Hold
my
on,
house.
Miranda, hold on. I gotta interrupt you.
Okay, no.
Someone's stealing the show over you. I
Special
love
guest
it.
star.
That is the best thing ever. That is amazing. I just wanted we're just gonna wave. She's over there. I love it. That's the best.
My house has been stricken by the flu.
Yeah.
And
Oh
this is
yeah.
my patient who is not so patient. I told
Yeah.
her to sit and watch Bluey until I'm done.
You're more important than Bluey, so fill up. One day that could change.
That lasted all of 30 seconds. So this is Cece. She's
I
5
love it.
and obviously very, very ill to sick.
Yes, yes. Glad she's not at school right now.
Okay, you gotta go. I love you. Please go. I love you.
And
so
now
much.
you know why I put a deadbolt on my office door.
So
There we go.
smart. Well, I'm actually I'm in her domain. This is her bedroom.
Oh, there
Full
you go. Okay.
disclosure, I'm in her room. Oh, I forgot to put out Annabelle. Okay, so you're very distracting and we have so many serious things to talk about.
I love it.
Apologies, everybody, but let me get through my little spiel. If you are listening on the podcast and you want to join us on the Zoom, or if you're watching live right now on YouTube and you want to jump in and chat with Ben, me, Christine, anybody scream into the ether, join us on the Zoom. You can raise your digital hand. We will call on you because we want to talk to you. So, and also please subscribe to us at YouTube, or excuse me, on youtube.com at Citizen McCain YouTube. Okay, that's everything. Let's get into it because there's a lot of stuff this week. I missed last week because I had a situation with my other kid, the 9-year-old, and so we didn't get to do a whole lot of stuff, but it's been very busy. It's a hot mess, well, an icy mess in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to you guys about what's going on because there's this like big trust drop with the GOP in Minnesota. There's a new Economist YouGov poll that's showing Republican trust in ICE dropped from 68% to 60% in just 2 weeks.
Mhm.
So that's a real shift. This isn't just noise. These aren't activists. These are actual real Republican voters reacting in real time to what they're seeing in the news, on social media. And, there's been a leadership shakeup. This is signaling panic. What do you guys think is happening? Because Stephen Miller came out with a statement last night, almost admitting some fault, saying that ICE and Border Patrol are not following protocol up there. And Kristi Noem, through a surrogate on Axios, is kind of pointing the finger back at him, saying, well, I'm just following his orders. And he's pointing the finger at her. It's like the Spider-Man meme where everyone's just like pointing fingers at each other. And Bovino's out. He's coming back to California to retire. So what do we do here? Ben, this trust, 8 points in 2 weeks. This isn't Democrats. These are real voters. What are they reacting to?
I think there's a couple different things here. Number one, anytime you have someone lose their life and it's caught on tape, you're going to have a number. If it's a question of, do you like seeing this or not, it's going to drop. I think that's basically the poll question here is, do you like seeing the loss of life and witnessing it, whether it's the lady that used a 2-ton car to try to run over an ICE agent, but she lost her life, or the shooting we saw a couple of days ago. That is something the majority of Americans, if asked the question, do you think this is the right thing, they're not automatically going to say no. Now, with that being said, I do think the president was smart here to have a little bit of a change in leadership and a reset. I think there's also a lot of accountability here. And if you want to point the finger of blame, you have a governor that has said he wanted a civil war, that we have a civil war. You have a mayor that has said to ICE agents, get the F out. And so there has to be accountability there as well, because there's literally a couple hundred other cities in America where this is not happening. One reason and one reason only why. And many of them are Democratic-led cities. They work with ICE agents. They don't go to war with them. They don't tell them to get the F out of their city, and they don't say, let's have a civil war. I think a third part of the story is you have these professional agitators, and we're starting to witness even more of that. They are paid, they're well organized, they're out there, they're stalking these ICE agents. That is not healthy for that environment. And so I do think seeing the number drop, the White House, again, leadership's important here. Having faith in those in law enforcement is very important. You don't want to lose that PR war. But at the end of the day, if you ask in the same poll, do you support the president going after rapists and murderers? That number is still going to be very high. Those that are selling drugs, that number is going to be very high. And unfortunately, this has become a sideshow that's now the main show here. And I don't think the president should lose the willpower to continue to go after those. Tricia McLaughlin, for example, made it very clear yesterday at DHS that they're not going to stop. But having Tom Homan go there and having a reset, the president speaking with the governor, having a reset, I think that's good for everyone. And again, I do think the governor realizes that he can lose two on this one. How many people do you want shot in real life? I would assume the number would be zero. I hope he also steps up and says, hey, we got to do a better job working with ICE. When there's violent criminals we have in our possession, we need to hand them over.
Christine, when you see someone like Stephen Miller actually publicly acknowledging protocol violations and like leadership scrambling, is this a signal of like an institutional failure, or do you think it's just bad optics?
Well, I don't think Kristi Noem should have had any business being anywhere near the job that she was given by this administration. She is not
Fair.
competent to be DHS secretary, and her deputy, Corey Lewandowski. The strategy that they have pursued in cities like Minneapolis has been a huge and disastrous misfire. And I agree with Ben about the fact that you've got a lot of wrong going on here. What the governor of Minneapolis and the mayor of Minneapolis, governor of Minnesota, mayor of Minneapolis are doing is absolutely despicable. They are, when they're talking to their activist base, they're saying things like, you know, F ICE and go get them. And then when they turn to the media, they're like, well, this is just terrible. This is proto-fascism that they're asking us to work with these masked thugs who are Border Patrol and ICE. No one is asking them to do the job of Border Patrol or ICE. What they are asking them to do is what has been pointed out in a lot of other jurisdictions is done, which is acknowledge the detainer papers that are filed by ICE when someone is in police custody for having been arraigned for a crime, turning them over to ICE for deportation. And that's happening smoothly in lots of venues. It's not happening in Minneapolis, but there is a huge amount of responsibility here on the part of the Trump administration. And the Stephen Miller Kristi Noem Bovino approach is to revel in the chaos, if you will.
Yeah.
It's to sort of say, we're bringing the fight right to your streets. We're going to get these bad guys, and we don't really have to abide by the rules or care about the optics. And that's kind of how they rolled into Minneapolis. And it hasn't worked. The American people want the border secure. And that is a huge victory that the Trump administration has achieved. They've done that. They did this thing.
In less than a year.
Yes, in less than a year. And they did it, by the way, without changing any laws. They proved the lie of the Biden administration. All they had to do was enforce existing laws. That is a huge victory. It's what voters wanted. The reason it's curdling, I think, is there is an optics problem, but there's also a tactics problem here.
Yeah.
And I'm really reassured to see Homans, who's kind of the adult in the room, being brought in. He is the only official who was cautious in the wake of the first shooting in Minneapolis. He said, you know what? We need an investigation. We need to see what happened. We need to figure this all out. That is exactly what you want leaders to do in those moments. And neither the leaders on the left in the form of, you know, Waltz or Fry, or unfortunately, people like Kristi Noem, who lied to the public's face and said things that were untrue both times. So that is, I think she should go. That's not obviously my decision to make, but she's completely bungled this. And look, that's on Trump. He chose her.
Speaking to the tactics, and how can we fix this situation with ICE? Because I know it's not a monolith. There are many qualified and very good agents. There's National Guards, there's former police, there's active police, there's very qualified agents who are doing a good job, who are good people who are actively doing this. And then there are people who are there for, let's be honest, the wrong reasons, people who maybe didn't pass the physical test or the background tests, and they're doing this because they want to go and be nasty in the streets. So how can we fix this? Because their claims are, and we're going to get to this. I don't know if you've seen this Ecuador um, consulate video, but they kind of, in some of these cases, roll up to uh, places without identification. They're in plain clothes. They've got masks on, and it almost looks like people are going to be robbed or kidnapped, attacked. They don't have a uniform. It doesn't look official. So how can they get their message cohesive in a
Yeah.
way that is or I don't want to say comforting because no one's comforted when they're getting, swarmed by agents, but how can we get this messaging on point?
Look, I think I'll push back a little bit only because my dad's in law enforcement, and so
Sure.
there's two aspects of this. Like,
Well, I
if
have a
you,
cousin
yeah,
who's
yeah,
on guard on call to be a nice agent. So it's like,
yeah,
I have family invested in this too, and
yeah.
I don't
Look,
want him being called a racist or a Gestapo. He's not. He's a lovely man.
yeah, I think there's two things to this. One, let's talk about like local police. They have fugitive squads. They do the same thing 99% of the time. I've been out with the fugitive squad to do ride-alongs in my hometown of Memphis. Like
Yeah.
they're not dressed like a police officer because there's one, surprise, and that's part of it. Two, their own safety, and three, usually they're going after, as the president would refer to it, bad hombres. And so you have to have some of that. Well, then when you have the left that's doxing, stalking, and putting out, I mean, apps where they're telling you in these signal chats of where they are and to go after and attack them and follow them and cut them off in the street, which led to one of the deaths that we've talked about earlier. It makes it even, you have to consider yourself even more. If you're driving around with a car that has ice on the side, remember, they were being attacked and those cars were had rocks thrown at them. They'd been shot at. So they took ice off the side of the car. Why? Because it was a target and someone was going to die in uniform. So I go back to the leadership here in Minnesota. If you want transparency and you don't want it to look like it's secret, then for the love of all things that are good, stop demonizing and referring to them as the Gestapo, and stop having people you work with in your administration that are working with these groups that are then doxing them and sending text messages of what hotels they're staying at, for goodness sakes, and surrounding those hotels and slashing the tires of the cars. Like that is actually happening day to day. And so I go back to this. There are hundreds of cities in this country where none of this is happening. I live in Houston, for example, now. It's a liberal mayor, a liberal city council, and they're not doing this. You look at places like Dallas and San Antonio. I go back to Texas because that's where I am. It's run by liberals, like very liberal people are running those cities in the proper. None of this is happening because they understand that if you have an ICE detainer and you have someone in custody that is charged with one of these crimes, you communicate with ICE. I mean, go back to just yesterday. They had someone that was wanted for child rape that they did not work with to release to ICE in Minneapolis. So what do? You have a throwdown basically as they're trying to find the guy, and you put everyone's life at risk by doing that. So you could fix this problem instantly if the mayor and the governor came out and said, violent criminals, we're going to do like every other city in America that is sane, and we're going to stop all this. Well, then you're not going to have all these issues in the streets because it's done in an orderly way inside of a jail or a courthouse. That is how this is happening all over the country. But they wanted this war. The Democrats, by the way, wanted this war. They're funding it. The biggest fundraisers of the Democratic Party are funding the protests. They want this war so badly that they want to shut down the government right now. And I believe they will. I'll make that prediction. I think
I
every
actually agree
Democrat
with
on
you.
Capitol Hill, they're going to shut down the government. They believe politically that if people are dying and it's their side that's getting shot, right? The Democrats, that is a sacrifice they're willing to make for the political gain and to shut down the government. That's beyond me. I think that's un-American. I think that's really sick and sad. But don't encourage people to go out there and start a civil war. And notice when the governor says it, the mayor says it, they're not willing to go out there and risk their lives. They're finding minions to do it on their behalf. I think that's even worse.
Yeah, the local law enforcement point is worth spending a moment on because they're responsible for things like crowd control, traffic control. If a car is blocking a street, you want your local law enforcement, your local police, whose duty is to protect the citizens of that place from harm. And that might include arresting or giving a ticket to someone who's blocking a street, which could cause harm. It doesn't matter if it's ICE agents who've had to go into a neighborhood because they are not honoring detainers in Minneapolis. you actually don't have those local law enforcement folks on the street there maintaining order because the mayor won't let them. The police chief is not behind them. We've seen other police chiefs in other democratically led cities saying the same thing. So they have blood on their hands too. And I think it's important to point out that these sides are talking about this in terms that are not helpful, and what the average normie voter who brought Trump back into the Oval Office doesn't want either. And so I'll say that's where I think the change of leadership strategy that Trump is pursuing now is smart, because he's got people in his own administration who talk about this as a war too. And I don't think that's been helpful. And that's not what voters wanted. So you have extremists on immigration. I mean, look, Stephen Miller wants to get rid of birthright citizenship. So, I mean, we have people who that is not a popular position in the United States. Now you can persuade people that that's the way things should be. But that's an ideas and persuasion argument, not one that says they're taking over our homeland. Some of the rhetoric coming out of the DHS has been ridiculous on social media. That doesn't help either. So I would like to see more grown-up Tom Homans, who has experience both in Republican and Democratic administrations doing enforcement as an adult, saying this isn't a game. This isn't a game where left-wing activists should cosplay being, fighting fascism. It's not a game for an ICE agent. And by the way, both of the ICE agents involved in these shootings so far that we know are veterans, experienced law enforcement people. They're not, ill-trained bunglers as they've been portrayed by mainstream media. Yeah. So
one of them, by the way, had been attacked weeks earlier and drugged down the street by a car. And still came back to work. Where a lot of people were like, "Dude, why didn't you claim disability? Like, you could have been out for the game and gotten paid to get out of the game." Clearly loves his job. Clearly wants to protect. Clearly wants to make sure that the bad guys are taken off the street. I love that about the law enforcement. But I think, Christine, something else that you said earlier, Kristi Noem, Corey Lewandowski. I know both of them. I think they have to learn very quickly on this, or they're going to be put in a really bad position. I think the president learned very quickly on this and moved to have those changes. But there's a lot of people behind the scenes. I mean, the number of text messages I've received, the number of people elected to office in D.C. and Congress that I've talked to about this in the last 3 or 4 days, her name is being brought up way too much. And when your name's being brought up that much, it means you're becoming the story instead of the issue. And the issue goes back to what Donald Trump won on. He was elected to deport and to secure the border. And now, if you are the sideshow that becomes the main show, it's a problem in politics. It's politics 101. I hope they learn very quickly from this and we move back to the issue instead of back to the personalities. And that's my only advice to them would be, hey, guys, like, you got to get out of the story. You don't need to be the story here. That's when you start losing.
Well, and to that point, how damaging is it long term when voters are losing faith, not just in the politicians, but in entire federal agencies themselves, when they just say, we cannot trust DHS.
When you're being demonized by the media every single day, I mean, it's an all-out war against them. They could be doing everything perfect and they'd still have bad stories. I think this is a short-term issue. I go back to any time average American sees someone die and a life being taken, it is not going to poll well, period, full stop. Okay. Like, it's just not. And so the further you get away from that, I think you're going to see things go back to where there's more faith in the system. But I do think some of the rhetoric that's come out, some of I think the statements that don't match up with reality, that hurts you with credibility. But that's more the administration than it is, I think, the men and women out there in uniform, those that are out there in ICE. So I would not overreact to that if I was at the White House today. I just wouldn't. We have a game plan. You have new leadership. You make sure you have new faces out there. You try to work with this governor and you try to do your job at the same time. If you do that, 3 weeks from now, we won't even be having this conversation.
What did you make of your...
I think the Trump administration is squandering an opportunity here to do what the Biden administration showed the American people, what deteriorating trust in federal institution looks like largely through COVID, but also through some of the ways that agencies and operations were politicized to pursue political enemies, DOJ, FBI. I think that really, there was a lot of mistrust in the public health realm too, CDC, all that after COVID. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons Trump got reelected was that he said, that's not how we play. We're going to have more transparency. We're not going to do that. But a lot of people in his administration do that. And he doesn't like to fire people because he sees that as a sign of weakness and error in judgment. And Kristi Noem's DHS has turned an agency, they've governed by social media in a way that is juvenile, it's misleading, it's bad for the institutions. It's not the way, again, I keep saying grown-ups, but she has cameras following her everywhere to make short form video.
Well, the
Ice Barbie
costumes.
and Border
Yeah.
Barbie became memes because of her own behavior and the attention she's trying to attract. That's not how someone who's serious about leading a large and important law enforcement agency of the federal government should behave. So I understand.
Well, and also, Christine, also someone that wants to seek higher office one day.
Yes, exactly. I mean, this is
it's a
not the
bad
way to
PR
rehab
move.
yourself after killing puppies. Like this, there's a better way. But I do
This is
think
not
they
the
have
way.
allowed her, they've let her do that for a while. And the backlash, he's got to get rid of her. And I would bet he will, but he doesn't like to get rid of cabinet officials, even when they make really terrible errors in judgment. So we'll see.
Well, it's like the Bovino thing. It's the retirement. So maybe it is going to be I'm going to step back because I'm ready to run for whatever in some kind of special
Dog
election.
catcher.
Yeah. Ooh, should be very good at that, I guess. Yeah. Yikes. Um, Ben, what did you make of your governor, Greg Abbott, coming out so hard against what's going on?
I think he's a guy that's trying to right the ship and realizes that you don't want to lose the war because you lost a battle, and I think he sees that this is just going in the wrong direction. I think politically, and I think in the PR aspect of this, if you lose the people, you lose the mission. And so I think he's a guy that also is got his own aspirations. I mean, I don't think it's anybody's. It's not a secret. He's looking at the White House, and so he's trying to figure out. I think, hey, how do I lead on issues like this and make it clear I would do it differently? There's an opportunity for people to make that point right now that are looking at, hey, how do I differentiate myself from JD Vance, for example, when I got to be on stage with him during a presidential debate? And so I think you're going to see some of that. But I also think he's a guy that has fought the past administration. He understands fighting with liberals, with ICE and detainers all over Texas. He's had that battle. And he understands there's two different ways to do this. And when you do make a mistake, or if you feel like you need to have a change, then you make changes and you do that quickly. So this is two things I think you're seeing from Abbott. I think he's actually, if I'm his advisor in the room, it's probably the exact advice I would have given him. Like, hey man, you need to distinguish yourself, that you would be different than this if you were president and if you were running it. And that's really what also Donald Trump has done. I mean, when you pull someone out, and he hates it, like giving that up to the liberals. You got to understand, Donald Trump is a guy that is fierce. He does not like to admit that there's something that's wrong, because when you give them a centimeter, they want to take a mile. I get that. I think that loyalty is important in politics, especially so that you have the backs of the people around you. But him making the change and sending Tom Homan was a very big signal that he understood the politics of this. I don't know if he'll get rid of Kristi. I think he probably is going to have a very serious conversation with her and Corey, and you're going to see a change. And if they don't change, then that could happen. But I don't think you're going to see him get rid of her in the next couple of days.
He made a very strong statement yesterday in support of her. So
Yeah.
if he does get rid of her, it's going to be in
months ahead down the road, when this is not a
way
story.
down the road.
Yeah, right.
When...
It's not going to be now. And there's people thinking like I had like I was talking literally to a senator yesterday. He was like, "Yeah, man, I think your days are numbered." I'm like, you don't know Donald Trump then. Like, you have no idea who you're dealing with. It will not happen right now. It could happen 6 months from now. It could happen after the midterms, for example. That would be my best guess.
Okay. So, do we want to do the Ecuador story? I think we should do Ilhan Omar, because this was pretty crazy. Last night, she was doing a town hall. She was talking about Kristi Noem as we were doing it. And this guy, 55-year-old Anthony, and I'm going to butcher this name because it's a lot, Kesmerisik, he ran up on her, sprayed her with something. She's okay. She's not, it wasn't like acid or something as far as we know. But he ran up on her and he sprayed her with this thing. And we're at a point now where political violence is boiling over, because just last week, Florida Congressman Maxwell Frost got punched in the face at a party at Sundance Film Festival from a 28-year-old guy who was yelling racial slurs and said, "Trump's going to deport you." Ashley, can we play the video of the guy spraying Ilhan Omar, please? for anyone
It
who didn't see
cannot
it.
be reformed. It cannot be rehabilitated. We must abolish ICE for good. And DHS Secretary Kristi Noem must resign or face impeachment. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
This, first of all, this is actually a problem. This is, people hate to do both siding, but the rise in political violence and the threats to sitting congressmen and senators and federal judges is just unfortunately now a bipartisan problem. And Capitol Police have been reporting on the need for increased security for our elected officials. We know of several elected officials who either have chosen not to run for re-election or never to throw their hat in the ring in the first place because of concerns for their safety and their family. Speaks to what Ben was saying earlier about the doxing of federal law enforcement agents. This is not good. This is not good regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, and it should be called out constantly. I didn't like how Trump responded to he was asked directly, what do you think about this? The only thing you say as a political leader in this situation is, no, this is wrong. This is not how we do politics in this country. And I thought it weird that she ran towards the guy. She
looked like she was ready to fight. Like
she's under a whole under a whole cloud of scandal with regard to her campaign finances, with regard to the Somali fraud that's going on in Minneapolis, to
Her
which
winery.
she has had links.
Yeah, her husband's businesses.
She's very happy to talk about abolishing ICE and getting rid of Kristi Noem, not for the reasons that we might discuss it, but because it distracts from her endless scandals. And I think she's a member of the squad. She's an anti-Semite. She should not be in Congress. There's a lot going on with her. But even saying all that, no public official should ever face any kind of threat or harassment or attack. It's wrong. It's wrong. Yeah. And I would like to see consistent bipartisan outspokenness on that subject.
Yeah, I when I saw it, I was genuinely concerned for her as a human being, because immediately I saw that. I was worried it was a chemical, it was an acid, it was something to burn her skin or to take her literally her eyesight. We've seen that happen in other countries with political opponents and activists that have thrown acid on people. I am one of those. The number of death threats that I now receive just from being on TV on a daily basis is at a fever pitch that is insane. I literally had a speaking engagement the other day. I'm now wearing bulletproof vests every time I speak. That is not normal. I did a speaking engagement the other day, and the head of security walked up, and it was the most morbid question I've ever been asked. He said to me right before we started, and it was a heavy security walk through security before you get there. He said, "Excuse me, Ms. Ferguson, we didn't get this on your paperwork. Can you give me your blood type, please?" That is a question I should not have to answer before I go on stage to speak at a normal event. And I didn't know that answer, by the way. It kind of freaked me out. I'm like, dude, thanks for getting that in my head before I walk up there wearing a bulletproof vest. But this is where we are because of what happened with Charlie Kirk. This is where we are because of the rhetoric that started, I want to be clear, on the left. And I demonize anybody on the right does it. I don't know the guy's political views on here with Omar. I think we have to condemn it. I also just want to be really clear about this. We've got to do a better job of protecting elected officials. There's too much time. If you've got a gun, you want to take out one of these congressmen, clearly we see this where they're just too vulnerable. You can go back to Giffords and what happened there. There needs to be more money given for security from wherever they are. And unfortunately, too many of them are sitting ducks for any psychopath out there. And we've basically desensitized, I think, too many crazies to the reality of assassination, whether it was the first attempt on Trump, whether it's Charlie Kirk, whether it was a second attempt on Trump, the list goes on and on. We saw a mayor they had an RPG shot at him yesterday somewhere in the world. This is becoming a world problem, but in America, we've got to lead.
Japan's prime minister shot, what was that, last year, 2 years ago? Yeah, he was actually killed on the sidewalk. So
and that's where my point is this: we are a great country. We have enough money to protect our elected officials. Whether you're a judge, whether you're a congressperson, whether you're a senator, we've got to do a better job with security at events, public events. It's just too easy access. And again, I think we've gotten to a point now where we've dehumanized politicians And now it is acceptable. And a lot of this is because of the rhetoric, right? When you're calling people the Gestapo, when you're calling Donald Trump Hitler, anybody that's with Donald Trump Hitler, like this is the problem with it. But we got to protect people. And Omar is one of them, by the way. I have no doubt she has death threats against her. And if you're leading in your party, whether it's Republican or Democrat, you're going to have more threats against you. But if they need security details, they need security details. And it's expensive. And unfortunately, this is the cost of the rhetoric that we've had in this country.
It's not even just at town halls. I mean, Sarah Huckabee Sanders got accosted at a restaurant.
Yep. It's just going out, being an elected official.
Scott Bessent got accosted at a restaurant just a couple of weeks ago, where a woman got up and started screaming at him at a restaurant. So, these people are out in public amongst us. They want to live a normal life, and they can't. And he's an active member of the highest level of the administration, and he didn't have security with him. She could have had any kind of a weapon on her. What? Oh, you're muted. Can we unmute Christine?
Okay.
Please?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, thank you. I think I did that to myself because there's a dude on my roof right now who is not a threat. He's actually getting
he's
snow
security.
Off of the roof.
Yeah.
But I do want to say that I think we should also talk about another very powerful force in our culture right now that contributes to this, and that's social media, technology. The fact that the reason people go and get in Sarah Huckabee Sanders' face or go to an Ilhan Omar town hall meeting and do these very public, violent, aggressive acts is that they get rewarded for it. They get rewarded for it with attention on
outrage
social media.
Culture.
They go viral, and their entire team goes, all right, fight the power. It doesn't matter if they're the right or the left. They get rewards. And individuals who used to behave that way, who were usually mentally ill and usually would be dragged off, arrested, and you'd never hear from them again, now they become folk heroes. And the fact that we've had a culture, and this isn't even political, you don't have the Luigi Mangione alleged assassin. These people are becoming cultural icons because of their violence, because it is able to ricochet around so quickly, and they are receptive to that form of attention. It doesn't matter if it's negative or positive. So that's another arena in which I think we have to be cautious about how the rhetoric point that Ben's making, I just think cannot be made often enough in our current political environment. And now my dog is barking. I'm going to mute myself.
No, we can't hear your dog. And similar to like the Gretchen Whitmer plot to kidnap and whatever they were going to do to her. I don't think that this guy, actually, if you want to get his mugshot ready, I don't think that this guy is going to become any kind of folk hero. I think he's just a legitimately disturbed individual, and that's just
we used to call that a
opinion.
crazy person. Yeah, we used to call that a crazy person.
Fine. He's batshit crazy, and he's a very bad guy.
Yeah.
I got his booking photo, and I got a hold of his mugshot. He's got a record going back to the 80s.
Maybe the guy should have been in jail. Let's go with that. Maybe he shouldn't have been out. Like
a million DUIs. And if we had the other angle of the video, he looks visibly drunk. He's like staggering towards her.
This is prison reform and bail reform. Like when you don't lock up bad people after they tell you that they're a bad person over and over again, that's on the prosecutors and liberal DAs. Unfortunately, we got a lot of those in this country. I mean, time and time again, we see these activists that are out there that we know of them. We have their mugshots. We know what they've done. We have like so much intel on them, and we're like, no, let's just put them back out in society and somehow think on a random Tuesday they're going to act differently than they did on Monday when you arrested them. It's absurd.
I want to know what he sprayed at her. She seemed. Honestly, she really kept her cool, way cooler than I would have been. I'd
open up a can of Texas whoop ass. I'm just going to let you know.
But you saw her face. She was ready to. She wanted to fight. She was ready to throw some hands, which is actually pretty effing cool. But the good news is attacking a congressperson is a felony, and I think it's a minimum of 10 years. So bye-bye. Good job. They will be locking him up, and he will no longer be able to drive drunk on the streets of Minneapolis. So another bad guy locked up. And speaking of the DOJ investigating Ilhan Omar, we can get into that because, President Trump kind of just dropped it on Truth Social that she's under investigation. And, so I looked it up, what her net worth is, and it said 5 million to 40 million. And I want to know, what does that even mean? Because he goes, she left Somalia with nothing and they have nothing there. Their only export is pirates. And I don't think they even do that anymore. And it's like, okay, That's silly. That's typical Trump. But he didn't really say what he's investigating. So is there any public evidence yet? And
Yeah.
is this a good idea to be announcing investigations on social media in the middle of the
I'm
night?
fine with
I
it.
mean,
It's 2026. Like, go,
well, and
like,
it's President Trump.
yeah.
Sure.
And but we announced it. I'm fine. Look, there's a ton of evidence there. I mean, there's questions about did marry your brother so they could get into this country. I think that's
I
good.
thought
That's
that was
big.
debunked, the brother thing.
I do not think it is. No, like, no, like,
Okay.
well, I'm saying, but based
I
on
don't
facts, not
believe
based on,
that.
I'll do a friendly bet with you. I'll bet you $50.
I mean, are we going to do a
I,
23andMe? How are we going to know?
no, I bet you it's going to end up coming out that is actually going to be accurate.
All right, $20. I
All
don't
right,
think
20.
that was her
See, he's
brother.
not, see, that's, yeah, but and time will tell. Like, if it's not true, great. But like, I think there's a pretty good chance that's pretty accurate.
That's
I
good.
also think you
They
look
have
at
three
her.
kids. So I
Yeah,
really hope it's not true.
You also look at the net worth aspect of this. She goes from 1 year to the next year, and it's like thousands of percent increase in net worth. And then you've got this winery that's shut down. They're not producing wine, and her net worth on that goes to 5 million from nothing from the year before. Like, this is straight up corruption at its highest levels. I think what you're going to end up seeing here is she's going to claim, "Oh, I'm being persecuted." No, like, when you go from 50,000 net worth in I think it was 2024 to 2025, you're now worth $6 to $30 million. Everyone should be asking a question when you're on the government salary that you're on. And yet you look at what her defense is now. Oh, this is just you coming after me because you don't like me politically. I would love to have that type of increase in my net worth in 1 year and 12 months. It doesn't happen when you're supposed to be a congresswoman that quickly. It just doesn't. And so there are tons of questions about the money. There's tons of questions about who's involved, who's bringing that money in. I'm glad there's an investigation. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. Fine, move on. But there are a ton of just massive red flags around this woman everywhere with her money over the last 2 years.
I think the explanation I got was that it's from her husband's businesses. He's like a venture capitalist and a political consultant, which we all know there's a lot of money to be made.
There's a ton of venture capitalists at 50 grand of net worth, right?
There's a couple things with her that are interesting from the political standpoint, though, because the first investigation into the financial questions happened under the Biden administration and Biden's Department of Justice. So somebody brought enough. They brought enough evidence to the Department of Justice to say this needs looking into. Now, they didn't come to any conclusive thing. She was never charged with anything. So whatever new investigations are opening, it is obviously linked to her most recent marriage to a consultant.
The new husband.
The new husband who owns this winery and has had some other, with his business partners, other litigation challenges. I will say, though, this is one of those things that's a bipartisan problem on the Hill. I mean, we have plenty of people on both sides of the aisle profiting from their public service while still in office.
Well, I mean, and even the Trump family.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a vast empire of opportunity for grifters and rapacious folks alike. So one thing we could do, I mean, it became an actual joke about how much money from the stock market that former Speaker Pelosi was making.
Yes.
If the American people really care deeply about this and see it as a bipartisan problem, like they should have, things like the presidential pardon power being abused or age limits for presidents, then we need to reform this. And that's Congress's role, is to tighten up the ethics rules. We've done this in the past to some good effect. I mean, when I first came to Washington more than 30 years ago, there was a lot more graft going on behind the scenes with regard to lobbyists and elected officials. Those rules got tightened. So there's always going to be some grift and graft here in the swamp, but we are capable of reform if it's actually something that's could be politically useful for both sides. And these cases are going to continue. I think the left's attack on Trump and his family members is reflected by the right's questions about people like Ilhan Omar. There's a lot of corruption.
These are fair questions to be asking, though. Everyone should be.
I talked to a former staffer of Bob Menendez yesterday, and he was actually really mad about it. He goes, "Let me get this straight." He goes to jail for having gold bars in his jacket that have like 1/10 of the value that this chick had in a year. And then people say, "Oh, we shouldn't look at it." Are you kidding me? Like, and I actually like get his point. Like Menendez was old school funneling money in. They're doing it and putting
the bars
it in reports.
were falling out of his jacket, though.
Yeah, like I know, but they weren't worth anything compared to what she's making off of a winery that in essence doesn't exist.
Yeah, but she's stealing money from California. So are you actually that mad?
Yeah, their
I,
voters are all going to come to you in Texas. So then
yeah,
they're
keep your California problems in California. Like, you leave my
Yeah, I
Texas
mean,
alone.
what do you care? She's stealing from California. That's Gavin Newsom's problem. We have a ton of hands up. Roger, you've been waiting the longest. Let's go to you. What do you want to say to Ben, Christine, or me? And thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I have a
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry.
Uh,
You have a bad connection. I'm so sorry. Can you
can you
maybe
hear
take us
me
off the
now?
speakerphone or something?
I can do.
Okay. Can we pause him? We can
Can,
come back.
can you hear me better now?
Okay. Uh, Donnie, let's go to you.
Hello.
He looks so cozy. You look so cozy, Donnie. I'm sorry
Yeah,
to
the
disturb
reason
you.
that is because, well, it snowed in Pittsburgh all week.
Ugh.
More than just, yeah, well, I've been going to work. I've been off work all week, so going into going into tomorrow. So
Oh my goodness. I think it's snowing everywhere but where I am, so I'm not going to rub it in. What did you want to say to Christine or Ben or me? Thanks for joining us.
I got a question for Christine, if that's all right. And it's kind of about Minnesota and what's been happening. Something that has not been helping at all, at least I think, social media and just the rush to response. I keep hearing like this person's bad, or this person's bad, this person's good, this person was good. It's just I don't know who's right or wrong. I mean, what do you have to say about that? Because the video, I do think Kristi Noem lied badly. I mean, I think all that. I think no one's in the. I just think the whole thing is bad. Well, what do you think?
Well,
I know.
it's an important point because I think the power that social media gives the average person is to do things like film live action things happening right in front of them and to have it go everywhere. But the obligation and responsibility of anyone in a leadership position is to not rush to judgment. And I think that's where this administration mishandled a lot of both of these cases of these tragic shootings, because you had the person in a leadership role instantly declaring someone a domestic terrorist when it was very clear that no one quite knew what the situation was. And even if she did know something, it was too early to be saying something like that to the public. So I think this administration in particular has been too quick to try to win social media wars in the aftermath of very complicated and difficult events. And it has not helped them. And it certainly has not built trust with the public. So I think when the second event came out and we had a repeat of that social media cycle, the calm head should prevail and say, and again, I point to Tom Homans, who did not, make any sort of blanket statement about who did what when, because they didn't know that. They should call for a thorough investigation. They should tell people to calm down. They should say, please let us do our jobs. These are they sound like cliches, but they're cliches for a reason. They work when people in authority have to calm the tempers and deal with a situation that has turned tragic. And I think the administration has very clearly failed to do that recently in Minneapolis.
I
They're
got
too online would be my quick response. My TLDR is they're way too online for an administration, in my opinion.
I gotta say, did anyone catch South Park this past season? It kind of goes back to Kristi Noem.
I saw that episode. I did happen to catch that one. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You know what? What didn't help there was when she responded to the episode. She got angry. She said, "This is bad. How dare they?" I'm like, they make fun of everyone.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
mean,
That only highlights it.
yeah. I mean, you respond. It's gonna drive the viewers. It's gonna make people curious. Like, I mean,
Well, and to the point that Ben made earlier, which I think is really important, when an American dies in a tragic situation, as has happened twice recently with these ICE enforcement and Border Patrol enforcement operations, you can't treat it like a regular thing that happens. It actually is unusual. Thankfully, it is still an unusual event in this country. It isn't in some other countries where law enforcement often does, kill political enemies for the people in power. That doesn't
Yeah.
happen here. And that's what's important to point out, is that that's why I would like to see the calmer heads prevail and say, this is not how, this was not the intention. This is not what we want to see. Let's figure out what happened, and then let's retrain our forces if they need to be retrained. Let's restrain these activists who are getting in the face of, like, let's do all these things. That is a complicated, nuanced response. Social media only rewards attention, whether it's true, false, happy, sad. It rewards anger, anxiety, and speed. And those are not the things you want in the aftermath of a tragedy.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much, Johnny. And I hope you stay warm in Pittsburgh because, oof, I've seen a lot of those images and whew, big pass. It was in the mid 60s yesterday and I was just freezing. I had a sweatshirt on all day and I even had to turn the heater on. So
the balmy 9 degrees here
Yes.
this morning in DC.
God, you guys, I'm built different. I'm built poorly. I could not take that. So he brought up a really good point about social media, and that actually brings me to the next thing that I wanted to talk about because big tech is going on trial. And this isn't like some congressional theater. We're going to ask you some questions and you're going to say, we'll do our best to hire more moderators and everybody's going to bullshit each other. They're actually going on trial. Mark Zuckerberg is going to, sit in the hot seat. And this trial is expected to last, several weeks, 2 months. There's 1,600 plaintiffs here, hundreds of families, school districts are involved. And the first case centers on a 19-year-old who says she actually developed a severe mental health issue, addiction to her social media as a kid. And so this is a real test on if Silicon Valley can be held accountable because pretty much these tech giants have created like dopamine slot machines for kids. And I mean, dare you take away a child's iPad and suffer the consequences when they're in the middle of playing Roblox or whatever? Christine, you've famously managed to avoid social media. I could not live without my Instagram. Ben, I know you love your social media.
Sure.
It's like a necessary evil, especially in the jobs that we do. Watching this lawsuit unfold, and this is for both of you, how are we gonna? What do you think is actually going to happen? Is it possible to change, or are we just at the point of no return?
You want me to run first?
Go for it, Ben.
All right. I've got 3 things I'll say. Number one, if you're allowing social media to raise your child, because as a parent, you're too lazy to deal with the child you decide to bring in the world, that's on you. I hate going out to restaurants and watching families and it's high school kids and no one's talking to one another. I'll give you a great example of a really fun game as adults, and you'll realize the addiction that we all have. We've done this multiple times now, and it's really fun. Go to a lunch or dinner meeting. Everybody put their phone in the middle of the table. First one to check their phone picks up the bill. And you will realize how addicted, because the phones are on top of each other and they're buzzing. And everybody, like, you can see like the hand like wanting to go for the phone. I'm like, if you want to pick up the bill, you can check that phone. But you realize how much that phone is on top of us and controlling us. I think what you saw from the doctors at the Pediatric Association, not just giving a warning, but saying even limiting screen time is not doing enough to stop the developmental like age of your child's brain because of this damn phone. And parents now have stopped parenting because their kids annoy them. They're like, here's an iPad, here's my phone, play this game, because they don't want to actually parent or engage with their kids. Like, I will pay my children monthly to not have a smartphone when they get older. I will do it because I care about them that much. And so to kick the can to social media, like if I own Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, my goal is one thing: profits, right? My goal is to create something no different than coffee or a Diet Coke that people want to consume over and over again. My job, whether it's if you're making a movie, you want people to watch your movie. And if it sucks, they don't watch it. So I don't blame them for creating a product that you want to keep using and using and using and using. Call it addiction, right? Like, that is what they are. I expect that from them. I think the problem now, and this is where legislation could come in, we've got to protect these kids who don't realize the drug they're on. And this is the most powerful drug, I think, in the world right now. I expect we need parents to be parents and stop having this raise your damn kid. And if you're a parent at dinner and you don't talk to your kid, that's on you for being a terrible parent. I'll say it again. You're a terrible parent if every time your kid's annoying you, you hand them an iPad. Like it infuriates me because I teach some of these kids like in sports and coach them, and you can tell the ones whose parents have checked out, and this is raising their child. And then we say, oh, we got a problem with ADD in this country. And this turns into a bigger conversation. So I'll wrap it quickly. But like, they're not ADD. You guys didn't raise them the right way. You didn't train them the right way. You were not involved as a parent. You literally hung it up and said, screw it. I'm not going to be a parent anymore. That's on you. So the trial is going to be interesting. Do I think there should be some regulations on kids and these apps? There's other countries that are doing it. I have no problem with that to save a child's life. But at the end of the day, a child that's 9 doesn't have the money to buy a $600 smartphone or a $400 tablet. Those are being bought by adults. 5-year-olds and 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds don't have debit cards to go out and buy that damn thing. It's because of the parent. And so if there's anything I wish was on trial with this, it'd be the parents of these kids who their entire generation now has been raised by a screen, not by parents who actually care.
Every year, my kid's school asks us to check out a Chromebook. Do you guys want a Chromebook? And I'm like, no. Give us the homework on paper, pencil. These kids, my friend is a 5th grade teacher, and she says that these kids do not know how to write. Their penmanship looks like crap. They don't know that the holes on the lined paper go on the left. They don't know where to put their names on the pieces of paper in 5th grade by the time they get there, because everything is done on tablets and computers, and they have no clue how to long form write anything. And what are they going to do when these screens or devices aren't available to them? So Christine, do you feel validated in your decision to stay away from social media at large?
Well, I know. I mean, yes, I personally am not on it because I would have gotten fired years ago if I was on it. So that's just a purely personal decision. And I don't judge. So many people now actually, as you said, have to be on social media. I think what's interesting about this case and the reason it's getting a lot of attention is that there are thousands of cases working their way behind it that are making a similar argument. And it's not that the companies aren't being attacked for making a product that people want to consume. They're being attacked, challenged to produce evidence that they didn't knowingly design a product that they knew to be harmful to children, when we've had a law on the books since long before social media, with age limits and about the kinds of things you can market and target for children. And one of the reasons I never went on social media in the first place is that I had friends who were being recruited out of academia in the early days of Facebook and early days of Google. And they were behavioral psychology folks. They were people who studied addictive behavior and how to make things more addictive. And these people were all hired by these tech companies at the very beginning, who were designing platforms.
Maximize profits.
It's the architecture of the platform and the design of the algorithm. And they're going to have to talk about whether there are ways. They have known for years that 9-year-olds were on Instagram. They want 9-year-olds on Instagram because then they stay on Instagram all the way through adulthood. So the conceit that they have put in parental controls and all of this is just that. And I think what's interesting is that, Snap, TikTok, other companies are settling right before trial. But we're going to see YouTube and Meta are the two that we're going to see. And Meta is the one to watch because Mark Zuckerberg truly believes that he's done nothing wrong ever. And there's a sense in which he's that idea that
Wait, Christine, are you saying that Mark Zuckerberg's a narcissist?
Yeah, it's shocking. I know. He models himself on Roman emperors.
Allegedly. Yeah.
No, allegedly.
I would like to see, for me, I think the important part of these trials is to look at the discovery process and to actually have these companies have to produce evidence for what I think what we're talking about here is social media isn't just about individual choice. And it's really difficult for parents who try to keep their kids off of it when their schools require them to be involved via technology. We have a collective action problem now. How do we solve that? Well, one way is lawsuits. One way is legislation. There are lots of paths, and this is one of the many paths that I think we're seeing with regard not just to social media, but to AI use in schools and all the stuff coming down the pipeline.
I love that point you make about Mark Zuckerberg, because he and Priscilla Chan have famously said they do not allow screen time for their kids.
That's literally what I was about to say.
Never get high on your own supply.
Stole it from you.
Exactly.
So if it's not good for their kids, but it's okay for our kids. Okay. Well,
They know
screw that.
it's dangerous. And look, I think exploiting children, there should be accountability there. I totally agree. But I also think to parents, shame on you for not protecting your kid from something you clearly can see is altering their behavior.
Yes. Yes. Because you can see when kids don't
You can
get
see
that,
kids. I've seen kids
they
melt
freak
down in
out.
stores because like
Freak
no more
out.
iPad time. If any product that you're as a parent having to say, you regulate, like, all right, well, if you're good behavior, I'll give you an hour of iPad time. Like that is not a conversation you should be having with a child.
Well, bribing kids for stuff is, yeah. I mean, that's a whole other situation. Um, wh I personally don't think tech is going to lose this lawsuit because of the disclaimers and the opt-in, whatever the legalese that you sign up when you register for accounts. But does this change when you say legislation? So many people are funded by big tech. I mean, look what's going on. Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, everybody's involved in these really high level parts of the government. If there is to be some kind of big change or a change push for moving forward, like you said, they're settling. How does this affect the campaign financing and the what's going on in DC?
Look, big tech's got big pockets and they're going to be
Yeah.
doing this for a long time. What I think you could see coming out of this, though, is specifically when it relates to children and age. And if what they find out is that they were exploiting kids knowing they were doing harm, and there are laws on the books about that, I don't know how Congress doesn't act. I also think one of the things that we're seeing and witnessing that is a really sad part of this story is that the not only the sexual exploitation aspect of it and kids that are committing suicide and that are being lured in, that can be in gaming chat rooms, it can be on TikTok. We've seen kids that have taken their own lives. I know kids personally that thought they were talking to someone their own age, whose parents have had to deal with the nightmare of it's actually an adult they're dealing with, and then they threaten to blackmail them because of the pictures they've sent. I have seen them then become advocates with legislation and what is done to those kids. I also sat with parents whose son or daughter have committed suicide because they thought that their explicit pictures they'd sent, thinking it was somebody their own age that they were talking to, was actually going to a predator, an adult, and they thought they were going to be outed to their friends on the internet, and they took their own lives. Like that's the aspect of this where I don't think you can buy your way out of it with big tech. And I do think that there's enough sane people on both sides of the aisle in Washington, D.C., that are willing to work on that bipartisan issue. Senator Cruz, who I do a co-host podcast with, he literally had a parent and a child who they had used the face of the child who's a minor, and someone in their sphere at school had put that on someone else's body, looking like it was a naked picture. It
Oh,
was
like
up
the AI.
on AI.
Yeah,
It was up
that was
on
a big
social
problem on
media
Twitter last weekend.
for months, and they couldn't get it taken down. And they had to call a senator who then had to call the CEO of the company to get it taken down. It was taken down, by the way, right away after the senator made the phone call. That shouldn't have to happen. Like there has to be more protections out there, and I do think there needs to be accountability for that. I think you're probably going to see, like Christine said, you're going to have settlements that will come out of this. But there is a blessing with Zuckerberg with his arrogance. And that is, he may be dumb enough to go to trial. And I think we're going to learn a lot from that.
I cannot wait to watch it. I hope it's going to be like the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial where we can all watch and daily coverage and, wall to wall people covering it. Because, like you said, I mean, if he's anything like how they portrayed him in The Social Network, I mean, allegedly, he's a huge douchebag. So I can't wait to see, because he's probably just gotten way, way worse. And I'm so sorry we didn't get to the rest of you guys, but we are at our time. Meghan, we miss you. We're so glad that you guys are snuggling that little baby and keeping warm, because that is the ideal situation, I think, for everybody. And we are all very
Amen to that.
jealous. Thank you to Ben Ferguson, host of The Verdict with Ted Cruz and the 47 Morning Update. You can find him at Ben Ferguson Show on X, not being problematic at all. And Christine Rosen, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and co-host of the Commentary Magazine Daily podcast, not on social media because she is smart. But you can follow at AEI or at Commentary on X. We will be back next Wednesday. Follow us at Citizen McCain on Instagram and TikTok, or at Citizen McCain YouTube on YouTube. I can't remember it now. Ashley's going to kill me. But thank you, everybody. Thanks, guys, for joining me, and we will be back next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.